Hi, thanks for joining us today. We've got quite a few things to discuss, some that will require some more fact-finding and information, but we'd definitely like to touch on today, and a couple of basic items that we cover during every broadcast. With us today we have Otis Ofori, who will be covering DIS, updates and best practices, as well as Teresa Palladino, who will be discussing case management and ETO. A couple of things to touch on first. Yesterday, an email was sent out regarding DHAB to HCV. Now, this email went out with a couple of attachments with it regarding the 2009 vouchers that we are finding reporting errors on. It's our understanding that in 2009, vouchers were issued to PHAs who contacted us to say that these vouchers, while issued, they were having difficulty leasing them because the individuals, the households that they were issued to, were having problems finding an actual place to move into. And therefore, they asked if we could make an exception and they could work on leasing these through early 2010. That deadline was supposed to be, I believe, April 2010 that these were supposed to be leased up in, yet we're finding that those records have not been updated, and it's still showing somewhat of a discrepancy between the actual number leased up and the actual number reported. We're showing that at the time, 356 people from 30 PHAs were in this category, but according to our records right now, we've got 120 PHAs reporting something in the ballpark of 7,000 households. So it's easy to say that the numbers are slightly askew. So with that in mind, we've reached out to everyone to ask for your assistance in helping us clean up those numbers, because this could impact whether or not we receive credit or you receive credit for your renewals. If you have any additional questions on this or would like further information, please email us, contact us, and we will write you to the correct person to get you the correct information on that. Another note is, as we're working through our reconciliations for DHAB Katrina, there are still a couple of outstanding placement fees, security deposits, and other fees that were supposed to come back. De-obligations began last night, and this is important that you contact us should you be in this situation, because as we reconcile our numbers, we prepare reports for FEMA. And as FEMA looks at these reports, they use these reports to determine which PHA to contact to find out what the nature of the outstanding debt is, or the outstanding repayment of these funds is. Now, while FEMA understands that our PHAs often have situations that are out of the ordinary, or there are specific things that hold them up, this could be a problem should FEMA's IG would like to audit how these funds were used. And should an audit occur, it could go beyond just these funds specifically. It could turn actually into an actual audit over how all of the funds for DHAB were used. And essentially, we're just saying, please contact us so that it doesn't necessarily come to that point. FEMA does have the right and the discretion to be able to use this information to create any audits or conduct any audits that they see fit, as it is their funds that we have been administrating this program with. So those are two quick things to catch up on. Towards the end of the broadcast, we'll have information on conversion. So if you have conversion questions, please start thinking about them right now. And while I can tell you we don't have all the answers, I really would like to hear from you, as would we all, on questions that you have about conversions, things you've been hearing in the public, just any kind of information that you hear out there, because it's through the questions that you have that we can actually ask more pointed questions of our leadership, or be able to possibly manage expectations or clear up any misconceptions that are out there. So if you have conversion questions, definitely keep those in mind, and start writing in, and know that we'll cover a little bit of that, a couple of points on that towards the end of the broadcast. So with this, I turn it over to Otis Ofori for DIS and DIS updates.
Perfect. Thank you, Judith. First, HUD is in the process of reconciliation of placement fees. Placement fees are provided to the housing authority that assisted the family in leasing up under the DHAP IKE program for the first time, or for an IKE family whose housing authority assisted in placing the family in permanent housing as indicated in DIS, with the records for an EOP code placed in permanent housing. DIS records eligible for placement fees are those where all three check boxes are checked, which are family contacted, family agreed to case management, and landlord signed the HAP contract. with the lease effective date of November 1st, 2008, and has a value greater than 0, which is entered into the HAP total box, and for those records where an EOP reason placed in permanent housing once again has been selected. Recently, HUD made callouts to all remaining PHAs that have not yet remitted their overage of funds for placement fees. If you, once again, have not done so, please send in the overage amount as detailed in the calculation you received to the PO Box mailbox address provided in the letter sent to your housing authority. These calculations, once again, utilize both DIS and VMS information to determine any overages or underfunded amounts of security or utility deposits. And they were sent to your housing authority last month. The calculations, once again, compare the lesser amount entered into DIS or VMS with the amount of funds that have already been dispersed to your housing authority. It's important to remember that the eligible leases selected from DIS are only the records of families' first time when they're leased up under the DHEP-IKE program, and where a value has been entered in security or utility deposits field as a criteria where all 3 checkboxes have been selected, and with the lease effective date after November 1st, 2008. Additionally, the data has been selected from VMS is both paid and return categories for security and utility deposits. Please remember to only enter in data in the paid section if a deposit was made on behalf of the family, and only enter in data in the return section if the deposit was paid and had been returned to your housing authority. Once again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at the DHEP-IKE mailbox. Now, we also want to address DIS best practices. Several questions have been raised in the field, and those questions consider. First, with respect to IRT exemptions, what are the steps to correctly enter an IRT exemption in DIS, and which fields are required? Answer that. An IRT amount should be in an increment of $50. They should always start at the first of the month, and the PHA should change the lease term date so lease records won't overlay or save a new lease over it. Now, regarding placement fees, which DIS fields are a factor that must be in the data field to ensure accurate reimbursement for assisted families? Answer. The payment standard, rent to owner, and FMR must be entered in order to ensure that placement fees are sent to the family, fees for the family. The correct EOP reason must state, as we mentioned before, placed in permanent housing. Now, many issues have been brought up with regards to security and utility deposit fees. The question is, which DIS fields are a factor that must be put in the data field to ensure, once again, accurate reimbursement for assisted families, and when should an amount be entered for a security or utility deposit in the field? Once again, the same fields apply as they do for the placement fees. The data should be entered on the initial lease record in DHEP-IKE. Now, with EOP families. For EOP families, where there's a HAP contract term for the date, the EOP should equal. Also, a PHA should not use a default EOP reason code. Now, there's also a new lease history button. If the lease history shows 25 lease records in the drop-down menu, these are only the lease transaction screenshots. Once again, if DIS says lease record number 1, but there should be number 2, you've overwritten the previous lease record, and that record has to be recreated. Now, to conclude, if there's any questions regards to HCV conversion, 5 new fields have been added, and please send any of those questions to DHEP-IKE mailbox.
Thank you, Otis. Those 5 new fields, can people see them right now? Are they visible to the PHAs?
They are visible.
Okay. Have you received any questions from anyone so far asking on usage or anything like that?
We have not received any questions, and once again, we have not received any questions concerning that.
Okay. So again, should you have any questions on the 5 new fields, and I know, as Otis mentioned, they're visible right now, definitely email, because that'll go along with whatever guidance we get on conversion. As we mentioned on previous broadcasts, we're very interested in tracking this potential conversion, should it happen, to a level that hadn't been tracked before. A big part of that goes back to what I mentioned on the onset of the broadcast with vouchers and issuance and usage. It's something that senior leadership as well as stakeholders and the administration are really interested in. Should there be a conversion, how are they being used? Are preferences helpful, et cetera, et cetera? So these boxes that they've built into DIS really will aid in that. And the minute that we understand or we have any kind of indication that a conversion is on the horizon, we will let you know so that we can maybe go over how to use these boxes with you. We might even dedicate an entire broadcast to that, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Now on to Teresa Palladino with Case Management.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We have a few talking points in regards to case management and ETO. First, I'd like to mention that I'm presenting this on behalf of Ayabo Morrison. I know that many of you have met Ms. Morrison, as she so diligently has traveled throughout the Gulf and has given a great deal of time and effort to assisting our PHAs with case management and DHAP-IKE. Okay, to start off, in October there were several updates to ETO. One of which is when logging in, the username and password automatically routed the user to the assigned PHA. This feature eliminates the need to select your assigned PHA site. To reset passwords, click the Forgot Password link at the home page. Once you select this option, an automated response will alert you that an email has been sent to your user email address containing a link that will allow the user to change or reset the password. Users may create password challenge questions for their user account. This feature increases the security protection on the account. Users may create these questions by clicking on My Account. Remember that instructions were provided on how to retrieve archived data within ETO for the purposes of a closeout. The instructions have been placed on the home page of the administration screen in ETO. This information can be retrieved for the following areas: assigned families, contact attempts, IDP efforts, and referral information. You can reach out to your InfoPath TA provider to assist you further. Completing a client reassignment or reassessment in person offers an opportunity to update client paperwork. If you have a release of information that is old or expired, this is a good time to have a new one completed. This follows for any paperwork that needs to be updated and requires a signature. Please take advantage of GoToMeetings. These webinars are available to agencies to assist them with the usage of ETO software. In order to schedule a live meeting, again, please contact your InfoPath TA. Needs assessments for all heads of households must be conducted to determine service needs. A full baseline needs assessment must be completed no later than 30 days after the DRSC is executed. Reassessments must be updated every quarter for the duration of the program. Participants may be reassessed more frequently if deemed necessary. It is recommended that individual needs assessments be established for all family members age 18 years and older. Minimum quarterly reassessments require updating data regarding income, employment, and employment readiness. Cases are reviewed by staff, and it has been noted and some agencies are failing to complete these sections of the needs assessments. Take care to ensure these areas are covered when reassessing participants. HUD recommends one home visit with a participant at least quarterly. Although it is not a requirement, as a case management best practice, HUD recommends that PHAs obtain a signature on the needs assessments as proof of contact. Make sure that deficiency corrective action plans are submitted to the PHA's designated InfoPath TA within 10 days of receipt of the case management monitoring report that is emailed directly to the point of contact. Case management contacts should meet the recommended frequency noted in the case management operating procedures. A review of efforts in the system finds that some agencies are not meeting the recommended thresholds. Although the contact may have occurred, if it is not an ETO, HUD staff will have no way of knowing if contact was made. Check the messages section of the ETO account and often as possible. Notification of system upgrades and pertinent DHAP-IKE information will be posted. Continue to update referrals every 30 days until they are resolved. As well, there are numerous needs without a referral assigned to it. Agencies should make certain that missing and unresolved referrals are followed up. This information is extremely important for reporting purposes. PHAs will be monitored against the service referrals entered into the system. If your agency is having difficulty finding referral sources within the community, the agency may want to seek out the United Way, as their website may offer a listing of social service providers within the jurisdiction. These resources may be good referral sources for DHAP participants. During the last quarter, the number of missing and unresolved participant referrals increased. Site visits have occurred to assure documentation of quality data in the system and in the physical files. These site visits addressed documentation updates and participant referrals and review of physical and electronic files with recommendations for corrections. Make sure that income information for continuing eligibility is consistent with what is reported in the needs assessment within ETO. We are now in the phase of the program where this data is necessary for reporting back. The data in ETO is what is utilized to make determinations about potential ongoing housing assistance for the DHAP-IKE population. Service referrals must be made by case managers relative to the IDP for each individual. Referrals should be specific to participant needs based on the information gathered from the needs assessment and the IDP. Referrals should provide the participant with service providers, contact information, including contact name. Please make sure that the referral is to a credible service delivery resource. Participants should be encouraged to contact service providers independently, if possible. Support should be given to those participants who have limitations on following up on their own service referrals. Case managers are required to record referral information in the case management tracking system under Record Referrals for IDP, Crisis, and Secondary Goals. And case managers are required to update referrals in the case management tracking system under View, Update Progress on Referrals. Efforts should be recorded in the Record Progress toward Main IDP Goal. In the permanent housing section. Select the IDP goals, establish plan, and reduce barriers from the drop-down list. Do not use the tracked contact attempts drop-down. Again, on behalf of the department and Yabo Morrison, thank you so much for all your efforts in case management and in working with ETO. Previously, the department did send out an email to our PHAs participating in DHAP-IKE asking for questions and concerns. One question that came up was, what is expected in a case management file? Again, in a hard copy, in a file, what is needed is a certification of family obligations, a signed IDP, and a signed release of information. These are what we require in the file. However, many PHAs, as a best practice, have been using ETO to print off family history and family files and family data or run reports to include in family files. Again, that's a best practice. It's encouraged but not required. If you have any other questions regarding case management or case management files, again, please don't hesitate to email dhap-ike or dhap-ike@hud.gov.
Great, thank you, Teresa. 3 things from what you mentioned that particularly stand out. Files. As you all know, we were audited recently by our own internal IG as well as the DHS IG. And while the file review or the file audit took place mainly with the rental side, at any moment our case management files could be audited. And in many PHAs, they are often one and the same. They're in the same file folder. So it's really, as Teresa mentioned and Yabo forwarded the information to us, it's really important that all of the information be there. And some of the best practices that they mentioned really are helpful when these audits come about. It's the only way to really reflect all the work that goes into putting these files together and all the effort that the family's making to be able to submit these documents. You also mentioned that some areas of the needs assessments are not being filled out. Now, that's a shame because it's through case management that we're able to really tell the story of what's going on with the public that we're serving. Recently, we shared this information with FEMA, and they were very grateful for the granularity of the information that you're able to capture. Most interesting, I suppose, is the information on education levels, ability to work, and actively searching for work. I know with the DHAP population, the numbers of those who were able to work were in the 300 and something range, but those who were seeking employment were above that, in the 400 and something range. Something that slight is really telling. Those who are physically able to look for work, it's a smaller number than those who are actually going out and actively seeking employment. This really speaks to the population that we're working with, and with the conversion still kind of on the fence and no real indication of where it's going to go, it's information that Teresa and Diabo mention and collect that helps make the case for whether or not this is ultimately going to happen. And lastly, home visits quarterly. That's critical. It's through these home visits that we are actually saying, yes, I've seen the person's home, I see their situation, and I can actually attest to the continued need for assistance, wouldn't you say?
I would.
It's through these home visits that we can also speak to the household composition, any disabilities, or anything that is not actually captured on paper. So now more than ever, thank you for putting in the information that you do, and for those who are maybe not as diligent as putting the information in as you could be, please understand that this information is what's making the case for whether or not we receive a conversion. With the information recently shared with FEMA, they, on their end, are really working towards a conversion and requesting one as well, as much as they can. They're in support of it for us because they understand that the population that we work with, these 5,000 plus, slightly under 6,000, are the hardest of the hardest cases that we've seen for DHAP-IKE. In contrast to the numbers that we've seen before, where some people have been able to receive assistance and move on, or have hit the program max and have thus moved out. These 5,000 plus families really speak to a situation that would warrant this type of longer term assistance. We have no information yet as to what's going to happen with the conversion. I know we've mentioned this on previous broadcasts, and as you all know, this is a lame duck session. We've not received any indication as to which way the decision will go, but we are submitting every bit of information that we can to FEMA, to OMB, to senior leadership, to everyone and anyone who requests it to know what population we're talking about. And there are a couple of factors out there. The need, continued need. Would an extension suffice? Now, an extension would be an extension of the DHAP program as is. Pardon me. This extension would be, and it's not anything that's been approved at the moment, it's just a possibility. It's something that has been questioned. Given the public and the number that we're working with, if we didn't receive a conversion, would an extension of the DHAP program as it stands, with the case management, with the visits and the quarterly evaluations and the assistance, would that be enough to assist our folks. And, you know, we have an answer. We would personally prefer conversion vouchers, and we try to make the case with the numbers that you provide for us based on the number of disabled and the number of elderly and the number who are able to go to work and the number who are actually employed right now. We think that that speaks strongly about a conversion being a better fit. But I really just want you to know as much information as we get, we'll try and share with you as earnestly as possible, as honestly as possible. These are just ideas that are going on out there on what would possibly be a form of assistance for us. As you all know as well, budget is a big deal right now, as it has been for a while, but more than ever, they're looking at government spending and budget, and therefore they're not being callous when they ask us for alternatives. They really would like to know, would this be a possibility? Would this be a fix? I understand that people are hearing things in the community. The conversion's already been approved, so some PHAs are already talking to their families about that. They've gotten that information from their local FEMA representatives or from someone in the community. That was a slight buzz we heard once. That's not correct. We really would like to manage expectations as much as possible, because the last thing we would like is for the expectation to be there and for an HQS inspection, which does cost, to take place, and for a family to move to an HQS compliant unit and it not actually turn out to be a conversion that's approved. We would not like for any PHA or any household to go through any undue stress or movement and it not result in a conversion. I really can't stress that enough. A couple of points to consider. In the event that there is no conversion, we should begin prepping our families. Now, I've heard from a couple of PHAs across the Gulf Coast who had smaller populations in some cases, and other PHAs had, you know, decent-sized populations that they've been assisting, so it kind of spans the gamut. It runs across the board. They've been able to assist some of the families within their DHAP Ike program with their existing programs. They've been able to use some of their existing assistants to assist these families and take them off of DHAP, because they themselves partially knew that there would be a problem with the conversion and also had the space and the availability. That's huge. That's excellent. That is, if that's something that your PHA can do, please consider that. At the end of the day, I believe that that's a win-win because it's assisting the family quickly, and it's essentially, you know, assisting someone that there was room for. Look into HUD multifamily units, especially for the disabled and the elderly. You know, the assistance is out there, the information is out there. If you need additional information as to availability, possible porting, reassignments, anything like that, please let us know. But please consider other HUD options. There's also permanent supportive housing units, public housing, SRO, Veterans Affairs. I mean, there are different avenues of assistance to inquire about, to look at assisting some of these families. I go back to the numbers are staggering when we look at disabled, the elderly, the fact that a majority of the population that we're working with are 50% below AMI. So with that in mind, please consider other alternatives. Okay. Agencies also have latitude to use vouchers from their regular allocation to serve families. You can make a preference for Ike families. Please consider that as well. If you have questions on that, how to do that, doing it, considering it, anything like that, please contact us and we will definitely talk to you about that and maybe walk through that decision with you. If people in your area are trying to rebuild or repair, and that's part of the reason that they're still on assistance, and again, being the population that we have that's 50% or below AMI, and repair and rebuild is in their best interest. It's what they're looking at doing. Let us know. There are still volunteer agencies. FEMA still has alternatives for Ike through their partners in the community to be able to assist with repair and rebuild. So if that's something, and there's no longer a FEMA representative where you are or a FEMA office, please let us know, because we can contact our partners here who have contacts in your community, in your footprint. PHAs should focus on the future. What's going to happen with these families? If you have scenarios or situations, and you can send us information. I know case management has been really good about sending us success stories, and they've been really good about sharing with us information about families who've been able to move on from the assistance and move on to their permanent housing and to their own supporting themselves, self-sufficiency. That's great. We really like hearing that, because it really goes to tell the story of all the work that you've done out there. But along with the case managers, we would all appreciate other stories. Maybe putting a face to a number, any kind of information you can send us on what's going on out there, so that we can share this with FEMA as well. They're constantly asking us for examples and scenarios. They really would like for their senior leadership to be able to talk about the hardship, because it also helps them when they reach out to volunteer agencies and partners out there. It helps them rally again and get us assistance for unmet needs. Something that tends to happen towards the end of a disaster, if you no longer hear about it or see it on the news, it's no longer a hot button issue. And when talking to our FEMA partners in the volunteer community, they're asking for examples, because if there is continued need and there is something beyond the scope of what we can do, they'd like to be able to use that, especially with the holidays right now. We know that, I know clearly, housing is first and foremost, but if there's something somewhere that could possibly be done or referred to a volunteer agency, our FEMA partners through their volunteer folks are ready to step up and assist us. So if you have questions, or you have scenarios, or you have hardship cases that could potentially receive assistance through FEMA or might require maybe an additional look, please let us know. Lastly, we've heard comments on, or questions actually, asking us, should the PHAs reach out to their state representatives, or should they advise the public that they serve, their households, to reach out to their local representatives? And while wouldn't advise one way or another exactly on a yes or no on that, we will definitely say that that is solely, completely up to you. It is completely within your rights, and it is something that makes a difference. Hearing from the public makes a difference. An example of this is when in DHEP-IKE, when Texas was considering the 2-month extension, 4-month extension versus the full 12-month extension. It was from hearing from the PHAs, it was through the numbers that you all provided and the information that you all provided that Texas was able to see that there was continued need. If that's something that you would be interested in doing, reaching out or advising the public that you serve to reach out, you are well within your right. And do know that actions, words, stories, examples do add up. They do make a difference. Again, I can't necessarily advise you one way or the other, but I can tell you from just recent experience with DHEP-IKE, hearing from the public did make a difference and does make a difference. And that's all I have right now on the conversion. If you have questions that you have, please email the DHEP-IKE mailbox. Pick up the phone and call me. Teresa also has portfolio holders that she assists, and call either one of us. Call Ialbo, call any of us. Call Sean and Val in the field who are out there working with you. Ask us, because it's only through your questions that we can actually try and get information. Sometimes we only hear the tail end of a conversation or half of what someone has heard, and it makes it very difficult to try and share information with you. Ask a question. There's probably a PHA out there who's wondering the same thing. And with that, okay, I understand we have no questions or email. I know it's a lot of information to take in, and it's pretty heavy subject matter. So I suppose we will then anxiously wait for any email or calls from you. Thank you, Otis, for DIS updates and best practices. And thank you, Teresa and Ialbo, for case management. And with that, we will see you next month. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, one last thing. I'm so sorry. Thank you for reminding me. This was going to go out in an email, and it actually went out, I believe, yesterday. but we thought it was definitely important enough to share on the broadcast with everyone. As many of you probably already know, Tony Hebert has taken on a new role within HUD. He is working as the Disaster Recovery Coordinator for HUD Region 4. Tony's love for DHAP, I suppose, fueled that flame of love for disasters and disaster response, so he is now located in Atlanta, Georgia. He shared this message with the executive directors, and we'd like to share it with you as well. I will read you his email. Dear PHA executive directors and DHAP staff, I have recently accepted a position with HUD's Office of Disaster Management and National Security. Starting today, I am the Disaster Recovery Coordinator for HUD Region 4 in Atlanta. Over the last 3 years, I enjoyed working with you and your staff to implement DHAP, first after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita, and later after Hurricanes Ike and Gustav. Thank you for your partnership, hard work, and dedication during these engagements. My time working on DHAP was one of the most rewarding experiences in my 10-year tenure at HUD. While there is room for improvement, many regard DHAP as a success. And it was a success because of the efforts of the PHAs on the ground. Thank you all for that. Thank you for all that you and your staff did. I am still working with HUD and still focused on disasters. Even though my focus is now Region 4, please feel free to contact me if you have disaster-related questions, and I will make sure that your questions get to the right people. For DHAP questions, please contact Judith Garza at HUD. As many of you know, Judith has been the project manager for DHAP Ike over the last year. She will be the point for DHAP-related issues at HUD headquarters going forward. She is copied on this email if you need your contact information. Again, thanks for these 3 good years. Tony. If you have any questions, definitely email me. If you'd like to reach out to Tony, definitely let me know, and I will get you his contact information. If you want to send him congratulations, we'll miss you, any kind of message like that, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. I know we miss him, so definitely let us know. Contact Teresa, Yabo, myself, and if you'd like to get in touch with Tony, definitely let us know, because he's been instrumental in DHAP these past 3 years. And again, it's his love of DHAP that propelled him into this new position where he has not gone far. We will still be able to touch base with him, and we'll probably work with him on many things. So anyway, thank you, Otis, for reminding me. With that, we thank you, and we'll see you next month. Happy holidays.